There's one thing that you have to understand, and that is that you are a prediction machine. Even just understanding this one thing is such an unlock. You do things every single day. You drink your matcha without a second thought. You smile at a stranger on your daily walk. You shut down when you're around that certain unique type of personality, because your brain is predicting in real time that these things will either be very rewarding or keep you safe from some scary consequence. But what we know is that your brain is sometimes making predictions in real time as you move through your days that are a little bit dumb, a little extreme, and or just unhelpful. So here's an example of how one unhelpful prediction could be literally shaping how you behave on a day-to-day basis, while you're sitting there going, that's just my personality, like that's who I am. Not even realizing that prediction is running in the background. Imagine you're 9 years old and you're pretty socially aware, and you hear your friend's mom having a gossip about a new mom in the mom group. Your friend's mom is saying something like, wow, she was really dressed up, like who was she trying to impress? Your brain registers that, puts it in a little file. As you get older, you're a teenager and you hear your friends making comments about other girls going, oh, they're trying so hard. Look at that outfit. Look at that makeup. That also gets popped in a little file. And from that data, as well as a few other data points, your brain puts together a prediction. If I put a little too much effort into my appearance, the people are going to notice and they will reject me. I will not fit in. There will be social consequences. So as you get older, you're really mindful to never put too much effort into your appearance, to not really care about fashion. And if you try to put in a little effort, as soon as you walk out the door, you get filled with this feeling of anxiety because your brain is predicting a social consequence in real time. And this prediction that your brain created based on some real data points is all of a sudden running the show. If you were a particularly sensitive kid, here's another example of a more extreme prediction that your brain might be playing out in the background. You watch your Uncle Sam talk at family get-togethers. He's obnoxious, he's loud, he's rude. He's not a likable dude. Everyone in your family speaks really poorly about this guy in private, and your brain is pretty sensitive. So it then goes, uh-oh, if I speak even a little bit like Uncle Sam, if I speak with any kind of confidence, people might think that I'm something like him. I am related to him after all. Therefore, I'm never gonna have an opinion. I'm never gonna speak loudly. I'm never gonna draw attention to myself, because heaven forbid that people reject me the way that they reject Uncle Sam. I'm giving you examples of some pretty bad predictions that are running the show in the background. But of course, you also have good predictions running the show. In amongst your unhelpful predictions, there are some very, very helpful predictions that are keeping you extremely safe. But how do you weed out the predictions that are making you do stuff that you don't want to do? Firstly, you gotta find them. Richard worked for a small business, and by all accounts, he was doing pretty well. His supervisors had great things to say about him, but he had a problem. Whenever he went into the daily meeting, he seemed to have nothing to say. He would completely freeze up at the idea of drawing any attention to himself in these meetings. So his therapist got him to close his eyes and imagine what it would feel like to be someone in that moment with no self-doubt. And as he did this, as he imagined this confident version of himself, he started to put to words the feeling of discomfort that arose. And he said out loud, oh, now they hate me. They, meaning his coworkers. He delved even deeper, saying, all of my colleagues think that I'm arrogant, like my dad, a complete know-it-all. Before this, Richard would have said, oh yeah, I have some low self-esteem. There's not very much that you can do with low self-esteem though. But as soon as he realized that his brain was terrified of being seen as anything like his dad, he realized, oh, I have something to work with here. Think of the predictions that you hold like the behind-the-scenes director. All you're really seeing is the movie. Richard's brain never consciously said to him, hey, let's not speak out in this meeting, because otherwise people will think that you're an arrogant know-it-all like your dad. Instead, it just spoon-fed him fear and anxiety to protect him from speaking up because of that prediction running in the background. Predictions can be kind of like puppet masters pulling our strings, and we're just moving around completely unaware that they're there. For example, if your brain predicts based on the data that experiencing a little too much success will mean that people pull back, people stop trying to take care of you in a way that you kind of crave, trust that your brain will pull the strings to make sure that you don't experience success. But until you become conscious of the strings being pulled, you'll think it's all you. If your brain starts to see evidence that no action you take is making any progress, it's gonna pull the strings to make you act in ways that you see as lazy. And you might just think, well, that's who you are, but actually it's your predictions. So if these predictions can at times run the show, but they are hidden, they're subconscious, they're in the background, how do you go about pulling them out? There's no one right way to do that, but here are a few ideas. Number one, try doing the exercise that Richard was instructed to do by his therapist. This is called symptom deprivation. It's a part of coherence therapy created by Bruce Ecker. Imagine yourself doing something different to normal, behaving in the way that you'd really prefer to be behaving, deprived of the ability to behave in your old way. Notice the fear that arises and then ask yourself, what am I so scared of? Number 2, if you notice yourself feeling compelled to behave in some kind of way that doesn't feel like it serves you, whip out your journal and look at the part of you that feels motivated and compelled to behave in this way. Number 3, the fake it till you make it method. We've all heard it, but this time, try to fake it till you make it and notice how uncomfortable that is. And when those uncomfortable feelings arise, because they will, talk to them. Why are they there? What do they not want? What do they really want? If you're part of the intention community and you want tools to help you to implement everything I'm talking about in this video, the change session in the change lab basically guides you through a lot of the things that I'm talking about in this video. And if you're not part of the intention community, join. It's $9 USD a month or it's $54 USD a year. I'll have that link down below. Becoming conscious of what predictions are running in the background, step number 1. But let's talk about how to change and dissolve those predictions so that you can make changes in a way that feels more natural and spontaneous. Jessica Schleider was in treatment for her eating disorder when she was having a supervised meal and she ate one of her fear foods. And afterwards, another patient walked up to her and was like, hey, what made you try one of your fear foods today? What motivated you? And she replied, and she was like, I don't really know. Usually I wait until I feel totally ready to try a fear food, but I kind of just realized that's probably not going to happen here. So I just went for it. Then the girl said something that stuck in her mind for days. Well, what if that's the whole thing? Immediately, she was miffed. Of course, that's not the whole thing. There's so much involved. It's way more complicated than that. And so she responded saying, what do you mean? Just doing hard stuff instead of waiting until you want to do hard stuff is the whole thing? And the girl said, yeah, right. Like waking up every day and no matter what happened the day before, deciding to eat something scary, even if your brain says that you're not ready. For the next few days, Jessica could not get this girl's comment off of her mind. It seemed so obvious and so simple, but it felt like this big realization for her. That one comment wasn't a cure, but it was a turning point for her in her recovery. And that is kind of the power of dissolving a prediction. I'm not in Jessica's brain, but if I had to guess, her brain held a prediction that eating food that she didn't feel 100% ready for would result in a variety of negative consequences. But when that girl made that comment, it almost forced her to reconcile with the fact that what she'd just experienced showed that wasn't true. After all, she'd just eaten a fear food when she wasn't totally ready and she'd gotten through it. She had the felt experience of doing hard stuff instead of waiting to do hard stuff until you're 100% ready is the whole thing being true for her. And that's kind of how you dissolve a prediction. So it sounds kind of muddy, let's make it clearer. In that moment, Jessica would have had a felt experience of surprise. And we've all kind of had moments like this before, moments exactly like what Jessica experienced, but for different issues in our life. This felt internal experience of, wait, what? That is actually your brain going, wait, there's an error. My prediction seems to be incorrect based on what I've just experienced. Let me recalculate. And that requires you noticing in real time that your prediction isn't accurate. Now, in cognitive behavioral therapy, bear with me, but they basically do this thing where they go, let's list all of the evidence for why your thoughts are wrong. And you might diligently write down a bunch of little arguments as to why your thoughts are factually incorrect. And you might also feel nothing and find what a lot of people find, which is that you don't experience any kind of change. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about having the felt experience and really noticing in the moment on an emotional level that what you thought would happen isn't happening. Basically, you have to have the felt experience of surprise, which is what Jessica would have experienced when she found herself in a moment of, wait, that's all there is to it? Logical and analytical facts, rattling off examples, rattling off statistics. It doesn't change minds. If it did, our political climate would just be in a very different place than it is today. Instead, unfortunately, annoyingly even, you have to have an emotional experience in order to change and rewire your brain. Mainly because your predictions are emotional. They often are purely emotional. They don't make any logical sense. So you can't fight them with logic. And for Jessica, she just so happened to have someone almost prompt her to have that surprising experience, which led to this natural change in how she showed up day to day. What do you do when you don't have that? It turns out that you can engineer these experiences on your own. So let's look at one example of a prediction that is making you behave in a way that you don't want to, and how you might go about dissolving that by creating a felt experience of surprise. So imagine you're running around with this prediction of, if I put in too much effort when it comes to my outfit, my appearance, I will experience some extreme social rejection. The other moms will be yapping about me. They're never going to accept me into their group. You're going to need to start really paying attention, really raising your awareness in the moment when you personally see another person in the wild, all dressed up, and you don't care. like at all. It doesn't affect your opinion of them. You don't judge them. It doesn't make you feel insecure. If anything, it makes you go, she dresses well. You might pay a little more attention to how the coolest people that you know noticeably do not care when they see other people in the world dressed up. Above and beyond, oh, she looks really nice. They're not thinking about other people to that degree. This kind of surprise can almost only happen when you're in the moment. So I'm not talking about thinking in your head, that person's not doing ABC, and letting yourself be surprised by the reality that's around you. You want to feel almost the same way that you might feel watching a science experiment happen in front of your eyes, just genuine curiosity in a state of noticing versus intellectually analyzing. What you're looking for is a mismatch experience named by Bruce Ecker and co. Basically, they used to think that these predictions that run the show were permanently wired in. So if you watched a bunch of women reject other women because they were a little too dressed up or they were trying too hard, and your brain then encoded that prediction as, if I try too hard to look good, other women will hate me. They really did think you were stuck with that prediction for life. That prediction was never going away. And then neuroplasticity came along and they realized, these lessons can be unlearned. But in order to unlearn these lessons, you would have to activate the lesson. So in the moment, be aware of what you're actually predicting will happen. You have to almost feel the truth of what you expect to happen. And then you need to mindfully perceive what you expected to happen not happening. I'm deeply simplifying this here, but that is what creates a mismatch experience for your brain. It destabilizes your original learning that your brain has taken and encoded, and it turns it into something different. In other words, a simple error in expectation that you perceive on an emotional level can change your personality and how you show up day to day. And this isn't really new information. It's just not usually talked about in a personal development context. All of the ideas in this video actually apply when you're teaching a kid to ride a bike, bake a cake, or you're teaching a trainee at work to answer emails. We learn best when we have a felt sense of, I think this is going to happen, and that feels really true to us, and then we see something different happening. This is such a predictable method for learning that students are often taught to answer questions about a topic that they haven't studied, prompting them to get those answers wrong, and then unveil the correct answers. Because humans are so much more likely to retain any kind of lesson when we predict one thing to be true, but we find out that something else is true. If you want to try out some of the ideas in this video in practice, you feel like they might work well for your brain, I have the Intention membership linked down below. In the Intention membership, head to the Change Lab, go to the Change session. It pretty much goes hand in hand with this video. To join the community, it's $9 USD a month, or it's $54 USD a year, which works out to be $450 USD a month. If you're also listening to this and you're like, you know what, I need some more practical examples of this process in action in day-to-day life, I just created a video talking about a bunch of lessons I learned pretty much through what I've been talking about in this video. If you watch that video, you'll notice that a lot of the time it's prediction, mismatch experience, change. I appreciate you so much, and I'll see you soon.